Hey guys, Welsknight here, and welcome back to another Pokemon Sword and Shield discussion video. On Sunday, I uploaded a video called Why Fans Are Upset About Pokemon Sword and Shield. And that video was very critical of Game Freak and of Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now, if you've been around my channel for any length of time, you know that in situations where there's an issue or a controversy of some sort, I try very hard to remain objective and to look at those issues from both sides. And despite all of my criticisms of Pokemon Sword and Shield, I don't want to give the impression that the game is necessarily bad or that there are no redeeming qualities. In fact, there are actually some things in relation to Sword and Shield that I'm quite excited for, and I want to talk about some of those today. So, in this top 5 list of things that I'm hyped for in Pokemon Sword and Shield, I am not going to discuss anything that should just be obvious with any new Pokemon generation, such as, there are new Pokemon, or you can battle your friends. Things like that that have been staples of the series basically for as long as there has been a Pokemon game series, they're not worth including on this list. This list is not all-inclusive. There are more things that I'm excited for than just the 5 things on this list. And finally, this list is my opinion, and some of the things that I would put on the list may be different than the things that you would put on your list. A good example of that would be Pokemon Camp, or Pokemon Refresh, or Pokemon Ami. They keep changing the name of it, but it's basically the same thing. It's like Nintendogs for your Pokemon. I'll be honest, I have never cared. It's just not a feature that has ever appealed to me. My wife, on the other hand, would be perfectly content to just sit there and pet her Eevee all day long. But because I don't care about it, it's not on my list. This is your spoiler warning. Obviously, we're going to be discussing Pokemon Sword and Shield. If you don't want to hear about Pokemon Sword and Shield before the game comes out, why are you watching this video? Go away. Spoiler warning over. Last but not least, this video is going to be done in a podcast style, so nothing on the screen is important. Feel free to minimize the video and just listen. Without further ado, and with all that lengthy introduction out of the way, let's move in to number 5 on the list, and that is that Pokemon Sword and Shield moves the series forward in some ways, or at least it tries to. I don't think it can really be argued that Pokemon Sword and Shield is the best looking main series Pokemon game ever on a graphical level. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's up to everyone's expectations. I don't think it looks as good as, say, Breath of the Wild, but I don't think you can really make the argument that any 3DS game looks as good as Pokemon Sword and Shield does. It's just that simple. It is better on a graphical level than previous titles, or at least previous main series titles. I suppose maybe you could make an argument that Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee looked better, had a different art style, but I don't consider Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee to be main series games. So I personally wouldn't make that argument. The wild area is ambitious, at least on a conceptual level. It may be lacking in execution. I haven't really been able to spend too much time there. I mean, I don't have my hands on the game yet. But from what I've seen in leaks and live streams and videos of people who did get their hands on the game early, it looks like the wild area may be a little bit lacking in its execution, to say the least. But at least on a conceptual level, I think it's ambitious, and I think it's a huge step in the right direction for the series, and that excites me. I would love to see essentially an entire Pokemon game done in the style of the wild area, but obviously with a lot more polish on it. So even though the wild area as it is executed in Sword and Shield may be kind of a miss, I think overall it's still a win for the series as a whole. Raid battles look both awesome and fairly challenging, and finally, this is a main series Pokemon game for which I can sit on my couch and play it on my 60-inch big screen TV on a home console. That's very exciting to me. I'm super hyped about that. And as such, I think Pokemon Sword and Shield does, in some ways, move the series forward, or at least make an attempt to. Number 4 on the list, I think Pokemon Sword and Shield has brought a wonderful list of kind of minor, much-needed quality of life changes. Pokemon Sword and Shield finally gives you autosave options, something that I would have loved to have for a long time. And notice that I said autosave options. There is a significant portion of the Pokemon community that likes to soft reset when shiny hunting or whatever. I've never been into that. That's not really my thing. I'm much more of a competitive player. Never really cared that much about shinies, but the fact that you can enable or disable audio save is great. It appeals to both the people who don't want to have it so they can soft reset for shiny hunting, and the people like myself who are worried that I'm randomly going to lose battery life on my handheld console, Switch in this case. It's happened to me many times in the past on 3DS and Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Pocket. It goes back a few years. I have definitely lost some significant progress due to running out of battery power, so I appreciate an autosave. I really do. You can access your PC box now from anywhere in the world. You don't have to actually go to a Pokemon Center to access your PC box. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but from what I've seen, putting a Pokemon into your PC box does not automatically heal it if you're out in the wild. So it doesn't necessarily make the game easy just because you can access your PC box now from anywhere. It's just a convenience thing. I think that's fantastic. I'm all for small quality of life changes like that. Wild Pokemon now appear anywhere in the overworld. Again, a quality of life change. If I'm looking for a specific Pokemon for EV training or because it's what I'm trying to catch or whatever, I don't have to just randomly go through encounter after encounter after encounter and hope that I roll the dice and get the right one. I can now look for the specific Pokemon in the overworld, and that is awesome. I'm so glad to see that feature in Sword and Shield. And they've finally given you the ability to skip cutscenes. Now, the implementation of it is a little questionable. Basically, you can either skip all cutscenes or skip no cutscenes. You can't choose on a cutscene by cutscene basis, and you can't choose to just disable tutorial cutscenes, but it's still a step in the right direction. Cutscenes are great the first time. After the first time, they kind of lose their novelty, and it does seem like Sword and Shield is kind of a dialogue-heavy game, as you would expect, honestly, from a Pokemon game. Most of them do get kind of very dialogue-heavy, especially towards the beginning of the game. So having the ability to skip that stuff is great. Number 3, character customization. I'm going to be honest, character customization is totally a guilty pleasure of mine. Sword and Shield appear to offer much deeper character customization than ever before in a main series Pokemon game. There's a huge selection of hairstyles and eye colors and whatever, outfits, shirts, backpacks, pants, shoes, hats, glasses, you name it, all that kind of stuff. There's a huge selection of that stuff to pick from to make your character look how you want them to look, and I think that's great. I don't think I really need to talk about it anymore because it's character customization. You guys get the idea. Number 2, getting into competitive is easier than ever. I did mention earlier I've been a competitive player now for quite a while. I think I started at like the tail end of Generation 5, Generation 6, and when I started, people were like, oh, getting into competitive is so easy now when it comes to breeding competitive Pokemon. And it was, at that point, easier than ever. But now, it's so much better. You have no idea how many hours I spent breeding competitive Pokemon to get the perfect competitive team with the right IVs and the right moves and the right natures and all that kind of stuff. It sucks hours of your life away from you. And they're not really exciting hours. You are riding around in a circle on a bicycle waiting for an egg to hatch. Okay? It's tedium. It's not fun and exciting and enjoyable. It's mindless tedium. I say that as someone who has done it for stupid amounts of time. Okay? I am very happy to see the changes that they've made. With Pokemon Sword and Shield, you now can get items to essentially make any Pokemon into a competitive, viable Pokemon. You can get mints, which will essentially change a Pokemon's nature. You can get bottle caps to change their IVs, which are returning, at least presumably returning from Gen 7. You have your item use limit removed for EV boosting items like protein and carbos. It used to be you could only use a set amount of them. I think it was like 10 or something like that. And then everything after that, you had to do manually. Now you can just feed them all the carbos and max out their speed stat. And you're good. That's it. That's all you got to do. You don't actually have to do EV training anymore, which is great. That means that players are now able to actually battle competitively with essentially any Pokemon that they've caught. And that includes legendaries and shinies. It is very rare to see a shiny Pokemon in competitive that is a legitimate shiny, not one that's hacked in, because catching a shiny, I mean, I suppose you could technically breed them. It's very difficult to get shiny, perfect competitive Pokemon. Let's just put it that way, without hacking them in. Same goes for legendaries. It's almost impossible to get a shiny legendary competitive Pokemon legitimately. Like it can happen, but the odds of it are so stupidly rare, it's not even funny. But now, if you catch a legendary or you catch a shiny whatever and you want to use it competitively, you can give it a mint to change it to the nature you want. You can get its IVs the way you want. You can max out its EVs and boom, you're good to go. That's it. No breeding required, no hatching required. Egg moves you can now learn by just putting two Pokemon together, and one of them will teach the other one the egg move. You put them in the breeding together, and you don't need them to hatch an egg. One will literally teach the egg move to another Pokemon. This is fantastic. It's so much more accessible for people who want to get into competitive, but are afraid of just how much stuff there is to do. And I don't blame people. It's a lot. It has been a lot of stuff over the years. It's a very kind of technical and grindy aspect of the game to breed legitimate competitive Pokemon. And I have boxes of legitimate competitive Pokemon sitting in Pokemon Bank right now to prove it. It's very grindy. And in Sword and Shield, it will be easier than ever to get into competitive and to get your hands on actual competitive Pokemon. I'm super pumped for that. Last but not least, number one on the list of the thing that I am most hyped for in Pokemon Sword and Shield, the competitive scene in Pokemon Sword and Shield is going to be drastically different than the last few generations. Now, all of you keyboard warrior competitive players who are like, they got rid of all the good things and they broke competitive. I said competitive will be drastically different. I did not say it would be better. It is way too early to figure out if the metagame is actually going to settle into something fun or not. We will not know that now. We will not know that a week after Pokemon Sword and Shield comes out. Only time will tell. But it is undeniable that the competitive scene in Pokemon Sword and Shield is going to be different from the last few generations. There are so many changes that have been leaked and revealed that will have huge implications for the competitive metagame. Dexit is one of them. So many competitive staples are just gone. I've been a singles player. I've never bothered with doubles, which I know is kind of the official format for whatever reason. But I've been a Smogon singles player for basically the entire time that I've been playing competitive, okay? It's hard for me to imagine a meta without Landorus T and Garchomp and can you imagine this? No Blissey, no Skarmory, no Landorus T, no Garchomp, no legendaries of any kind for that matter, no Tapus. I mean, there's just so many things that have been, every matchup you play, you're like, well, I can expect to see at least 3 of these. You're talking about no Heatran. and no megas for that matter. I mean, it's going to be wildly different than what we have right now. There's a ton of moves that have apparently been cut as well. That was leaked earlier today when I'm recording this video. There's apparently a number of moves. 144 moves have been cut from Pokemon. Most of them are Z moves and special partner moves from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, like Batty Bad and Zippy Zap or whatever. But there's some competitive ones that really surprised me. Hidden Power no longer exists. That's huge. Return and Frustration no longer exist. Pursuit is gone. Pursuit trapping is a thing of the past. Signal Beam is gone. But no more Pursuit trapping and no more Hidden Power. That is huge. And the meta will adjust. You know, I know there are going to be people who say, wow, they left Ferrothorn in, but removed Hidden Power Fire and got rid of all of its counters? This is horrible. Yeah, but the meta will adjust. If necessary, Ferrothorn will get banned, and we'll move on. So the same goes for Aegislash and Toxapex and all these other ones. The meta will sort itself out, and it will be a very different meta. There's new held items, like, I think they're called like the super heavy boots or the iron boots or some sort of boots. And it's a held item which apparently negates entry hazard damage. So, you know, oh, Ferrothorn is in, but it has no counters. What are you going to do? Send in Charizard with its 4x Stealth Rock weakness? Yeah, I will. I'll send in a Charizard holding this held item that means he doesn't have a Stealth Rock weakness anymore. That's a huge change. You know, it's going to be a very, very different meta. As I said earlier, it's way too early to tell if the competitive meta for Pokemon Sword and Shield will ultimately be looked back upon as one that was fun. It's way too early to tell that. But it will be remembered as something that was different. And for that, I am extremely excited. So my friends, there's my top 5 things that I'm excited for in Pokemon Sword and Shield. What does your list look like? Discuss in the comments down below. Feel free to debate and discuss the game in general, but remember, be respectful. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding the game, but respect your fellow people. I will delete comments if they cross the line. If you are interested in seeing my video discussing the Dexit controversy, I'll put a link to that in the description for you. Also, I have decided ultimately that I do intend to do a series on Pokemon Sword, so look forward to that. I could realistically do an entire video talking about my thought process as to whether I would or would not ultimately decide to play the game, but my final decision is that I'm going to show it to you, be honest about it, give you my honest critique and feedback, show the good and the bad, and let you decide for yourself. Other than that, my friends, I think I'm out of time for this one. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Links in the description down below, so check those out as well. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.